The Georgia evening hung thick with humidity as Lenora Miles parked her old sedan in front of Medicina Pharmacy. After a 16-hour ER shift, even turning the ignition key felt like a final test of endurance. Her RN badge clung to the front of her scrubs as she stepped into the overlit store. The teenage clerk barely looked up from his phone. Lenora, used to indifference, offered a soft hi and slid her ID, insurance, and prescription across the counter. "Refill April, 30-day supply," she said. The boy pecked at the keyboard. The silence dragged. Lenora shifted her weight, spine aching from hours on her feet. A woman with a toddler ambled through the aisles. Then came the whisper, clerk to manager. A woman with tightly pursed lips and suspicion in her eyes stepped forward. "There's an issue with your insurance," the manager said. Lenora blinked. "That can't be right. I've filled this same prescription here for over a year." The woman's voice turned colder. "It's not matching tonight. We're not authorized to dispense it." Lenora leaned forward slightly. "Please double-check. Everything matches." "We've already contacted the authorities," the manager said flatly. "You'll need to wait here." Lenora froze, hand still on the counter. She could have left. Should have. But something told her this wasn't about insurance. It was about assumption. Outside, the soft glow of sirens crept toward the storefront. She stayed still, breath steady. She wasn't a criminal. She was a nurse, a woman who'd spent decades saving lives. But tonight, none of that seemed to matter. "I want you to remember," she said quietly to the clerk. "I told you everything was correct." He looked down. The store doors slid open with a cheerful chime that felt grotesquely out of place. Two officers stepped in. The first was older, heavy-set, with a buzz haircut and a look that said he'd made up his mind. The second hovered behind, younger, uncertain. The manager pointed. "That's her. She tried to use someone else's insurance." "Fraud." Neither officer asked for documents. "Ma'am," the older one said. "Step outside." "I haven't done anything wrong," Lenora replied, her voice calm. "Don't make this difficult," he muttered. "She gave us her ID." The clerk whispered, barely audible. The officer didn't care. He moved forward too close. "Last chance." Lenora's spine straightened. "You're making a mistake." But then his hand snapped out, grabbing her wrist hard. Pain shot up her arm. Before she could react, he spun her, slammed her chest into the counter, and wrapped his arm around her neck. Gasps echoed. Someone said, "Oh my God." The room blurred. She felt her knees weaken, but she refused to fall. "I can't breathe," she choked. "She's not resisting," the younger officer Boone said. "She's resisting arrest," the older one snapped. His forearm tightened. "She's just standing there." Boone repeated, louder. Then, suddenly, the grip loosened. Lenora coughed, stumbled, eyes watery, throat raw. Someone had a phone raised. Red light blinking. Recording. "She assaulted me," the officer barked. "She resisted arrest." "I didn't lay a finger on you," Lenora said, voice hoarse, but it didn't matter. He twisted her arm behind her back, slammed on the cuffs. "You're done here," he growled, dragging her toward the door. She didn't fight, didn't scream. She walked, head high, through the store like a woman who'd survived worse that a child began to cry. Someone shouted, "I got that on video." The younger officer looked like he might be sick. The cruiser door slammed shut behind her, the metal echoing. In the silence, Lenora whispered to herself, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." No threats, just truth. The ride to the station was wordless. The night passed by in a blur of dim lights and dark windows. Slade, the arresting officer, gripped the wheel like he owned every road. Boone didn't speak. The station. Slade yanked her out roughly, not bothering to mask his contempt. Inside, the desk sergeant raised an eyebrow at Lenora's badge still clipped to her collar. "She assaulted me." "Resisted," Slade said quickly, dropping papers on the counter. "I want my phone call," Lenora said. "You'll get it," Slade sneered. "Now," she said. The sergeant looked between them and nodded. "Give her the phone." In the holding cell, her fingers shook as she dialed a memorized number.1 ring. "2." Then a voice. "Miles?" Lenora exhaled. It happened. A pause. "Did they touch at you?" "Yes. We're on it. Don't say anything else." She hung up and sat back. the sting of the cuffs still raw on her wrists. Somewhere down the hall, she heard shouting. Slade's voice. Another officer pushing back. She closed her eyes and let the silence settle, because this time, something was coming. His partner, Boone, sat beside him like a man slowly shrinking into his own uniform, eyes flicking nervously to the mirror. He wasn't sure if he was more afraid of what he saw behind him or what he had just become. "She's lucky we didn't charge her with assault," Slade muttered, his voice thick with self-righteousness. "You saw how she squared up on me?" Boone didn't answer. Lenora sat in silence. There was nothing left to say. They had already decided what she was: a threat, a liar, a case number. Speaking now would only become more evidence twisted against her. When the cruiser pulled into the parking lot of the Millwood precinct, the headlights briefly lit the chipped word integrity above the doors. Ironic, she thought. Slade yanked open the door. "Let's go. Don't make me drag you." She stepped out on her own. The air here felt colder, sharper, the kind that carried memory. Inside, the station hummed with fluorescent light and stank of burnt coffee. Officers loitered at the front desk, some whispering, others smirking. Lenora felt their eyes, not curious, but entertained. This wasn't new. It was routine to tea the counter. The desk sergeant glanced up, his face dull with apathy. "Name?" "She can't talk," Slade said with a smirk. "Try to go mute back at the store." Lenora's voice cut through the air, hoarse but steady. "Lenora Miles, registered nurse. License number 18374W. No one reacted. Boone unlocked her cuffs with trembling fingers. The booking process was mechanical. Fingerprints, mugshot, cold hands and cold expressions. Her photo captured not defeat, but defiance. She stared straight through the lens. The cell was small, bare bench, stained toilet. Boone opened the door gently. Slade shoved her in anyway. "You want to tell us the truth now?" Slade asked, leaning on the bars that Lenora's eyes didn't waver. "The truth is, you're going to regret what you did tonight." Slade scoffed. "You got a lawyer hiding in your scrubs." She said nothing. She didn't need to, because tucked inside her coat's hidden seam was her federal investigator badge. She hadn't shown it. Not yet. She hadn't needed to. The call had already been made. Her backup, a Department of Justice Civil Rights Task Force, would be watching the video, preparing motions, analyzing the pharmacy's footage, reviewing every frame. She wasn't the victim. She was the match. Time passed. The walls buzzed. The floor felt colder now, but it wasn't exhaustion. It was restraint, sharpened. Her strength hadn't come from muscle or threats, but patience. Then came a sound. Not the shuffling of local officers or the bark of Slade. No, this was different, slower, deliberate footsteps down the corridor. Voices dropped, then silence. The door opened. First came two men in dark suits, eyes unreadable, movements practiced. Between them walked a man whose presence filled the space before he spoke a word. Arthur Miles, her father. His gray coat fell neatly across broad shoulders. The silver in his hair caught the dull lights like a badge of its own. His silence wasn't empty. It carried weight. Years ago, he'd been one of the most feared internal affairs investigators on the East Coast. Now, semi-retired, he only stepped in when the system broke down, or when someone touched his daughter. He looked at her, not the officers. And in that look, "I'm here. I saw. You did nothing wrong." Behind him, the deputy chief stammered, "Mr. Miles, we weren't notified." "You are now," Arthur said calmly. "Release her." Immediately, Slade stepped forward, his posture stiffening. "With respect, sir," she resisted. "Officer Slade," Arthur interrupted. "You laid hands on a federal agent. You ignored identification. You escalated without probable cause. That's not resistance. That's recordable misconduct." Boone froze. His mouth opened, then closed again to Slade's face turned pale. "She never said." "She didn't have to," Arthur said, now facing him directly. "You never asked. You saw her skin and wrote the rest of the story." The suits moved past him. One unlocked the cell. The other handed her back her coat. "You're free to go, Special Agent Miles," one of them said. "We'll handle this from here." Lenora stepped out, brushing past Slade without a glance. Her voice was even. This isn't over. Arthur's hand rested lightly on her back as they walked. Slade stood frozen, blinking like he'd just realized the uniform on his chest wasn't enough to shield him from what was coming. At the front desk, Boone quietly slid her paperwork back. "I'm sorry," he said. "It wasn't loud, but it was honest." Lenora looked at him, studied the shame in his eyes. "Next time," she said softly, "speak sooner." Outside, dawn was breaking. Lenora looked up at the sky, her throat still sore, her wrists still red. But she smiled just slightly, because the storm had passed, and now the reckoning would begin.